Hey everyone, this is Luke from basicgorilla.com, and today I'm here with Slink. His real name is Evan. Evan, how's it going, mate?
Pretty good, mate. How are you, Luke?
I'm doing well, man. So basically, what's going to happen is Slink's going to talk about some general stuff first of all, his equipment setup, influences, things like that, and then we're going to get more in depth, and he's actually going to walk you through one of the tracks that he made off his album Front Yard Futon. So the track is called Inside, and we're going to get in depth with that, and you'll be able to see inside his Ableton project as he explains that. So cool. With all that said, Evan, let's talk first of all about who you are. For anyone that doesn't have any idea who Slink is, what are you all about and what kind of music do you make?
Well, I'm from Australia. I'm living in Vancouver now, and I've been producing for about 10 years now, maybe even longer than that, actually. And I've been a DJ for roughly the same time, and moved to Canada about 2.5 years ago. And I started out making drum and bass, actually. A lot of people don't know that. I wanted to be a drum and bass DJ and producer.
Same
but
as me.
What's that?
Same as me, man. I used to make drum and bass. That was pretty much all I made before.
It's good fun. And then I got into a little bit of hip hop production as well. And then I had my first gig, and it was at a cafe. So you can't play drum and bass at a cafe. So I got into funk and hip hop and stuff, which is more what I'm known for now. The remixed kind of mashup funk, and then moving on to later on in my career, more of the glitch hop kind of sound. So funky glitch hop, I guess.
Yeah, right. Awesome. And so for anyone that doesn't know that style of music, who are some of the similar artists that they may have heard of before?
Oh, you've definitely heard of A-Skills, Featurecast, Sticky Buds, even loosely like Crafty Cuts, although he's mostly known for his breaks, but he does a little bit of funky glitch up here and there.
Nice.
Yeah, those kind of guys. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So let's talk about your setup. Like, what workstation do you use? What monitors do you use? And things like that.
So I use Ableton Live, obviously. And I have, here, I'll show you. I've got these these Fostex PM2 MK2s, and they're pretty nice. They're just powered speakers, and the really cool thing I like about them is it has a tweeter gain, so you can adjust how much treble is coming out of the top speaker, and the bass comes out of the bottom speaker. So through my experience, what I actually figured out is if I'm rendering tracks down and then realize that there's not enough treble, then I just turn the treble down on my speakers to force me to add more. But I seriously recommend these speakers. They're pretty decent.
Excellent.
But aside from that, I just have a little Korg. I'll just show you this. It's just a little Korg micro key MIDI keyboard. It's 3 octaves. No bells and whistles, just octave up and down and pitch and mod wheel. And that's it. I produce on a PC. So yeah.
Okay. And do you actually have a talk box as well?
I do. I'm not sure if I can show you, but it's an MXR talk box. Let me see if I can just get the camera to look at it. Yeah, MXR talk box. So the tube goes in there, and then there's a few knobs to change the kind of sound that comes out of the tube. There's slight distortion, volume, and a tone, which is kind of acts like a EQ, really. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, any of you guys watching this can check out some of the videos on Slink's YouTube channel. He's actually got, I saw one video where you're using that talkbox. So that was really cool.
I've actually, I want to get better at the talkbox. So my way of doing that is to do a talkbox video every Tuesday, #TalkboxTuesday, on my Facebook page. So if you want to watch me and come along on the journey, with me getting better at the talkbox, and check out my fan page.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll see how good you are by the end of 2016.
We'll see. Hopefully, I can get good enough to play live. That'll be really fun.
Nice. All right, so let's talk about some of your soft synths and VSTs and things like that. Do you have any kind of go-to soft synths or audio effects plugins that you like to use?
As far as like synths go, obviously Massive has been a big one for me. I always find myself using Massive in one part of the project or another. Recently, Serum has been a good go-to for like those high kind of chord sounds and even some bass sounds. It's really versatile. It's basically like Massive, but it's kind of been taken to the next level, you know? But aside from that, I've experimented with a few others, but I think those two would be my staples.
Do you use Ableton Operator as well?
Very rarely.
Right.
Yeah. Occasionally, like, um, if I want to make a sub sound, or I've used it to make a neuro bass sound before, but I don't use it that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, for any of you guys who know Slink's music, you'll know that it has a lot of real instruments in it as well as digital sounds. So, I wanted to ask you, Slink, about that. So, in terms of samples, do you typically get musicians to actually play things for you, or do you use loops from sample packs, or what do you do there?
I'd say it's about half and half. I definitely have a large library of, funky guitars and horn samples and stuff like that. But I've been trying to get more and more actual musicians to play on some of my tracks, and I think it's just more just because these days I know more musicians than I used to. So, like for example, Father Funk has been playing lots of guitars for me recently. My housemate upstairs, his name's Cole. He plays for the Funk Hunters sometimes, and he's done a little bit of trumpet for me, which is really nice. He's very talented. A couple other guys down in Portland, Afri Cuban and Max Ribner, have been playing some guitars and horns for me. So I'm trying to get more and more actual musicians involved in my tracks. But usually what I tend to do is, as I'm coming up with the track, I'll just try and find a couple of samples within my library to sort of use as a placeholder. And then, further down the track, I'll actually get someone to record something, which is obviously a lot better than the sample.
So, do you normally, for example, those guys in Portland, would you travel down to Portland and record with them, or do they just record and send you the files?
When I wrote Front Yard Futon with Max Ribner and Afri Cuban, we just actually jumped on a Skype call together, and I was like, sort of, directing the recording session a little bit from my end. But
Yeah.
mostly I left it up to just their own sort of artistic interpretation of what I wanted. And
Yeah.
I actually find a big part of getting the most out of your musicians is just directing them the right way. Like, I want something like this. I want a little bit of that, and I've been getting better at telling these musicians exactly what I'm after.
Yeah, that must be a skill in itself, kind of communicating your
Yeah,
vision of melodies and
it is
hooks and
because
stuff.
as a music producer, you can hear something in your head, and you have to verbalize it in a way that an actual musician can understand. Whether it be telling them what key the song is in and what kind of tempo and rhythm you want. So lots of emails and Skype sessions, basically. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that actually brings me to the next point because if you listen to Slink's music, guys, then you might notice that it's very, very melodic, very musical, especially compared to some other styles of electronic music. There might be a lot more kind of rhythm focused and less going on with the melodies and the hooks. So I wanted to ask you, Evan, how important is music theory knowledge for producing your style of music?
Oh, it's very important, I think. I think a lot of people that are new producers go into writing music and really focus on the sound design aspect of it. And what they don't realize is you can use a really simple sound, and if the notes and melodies and chord progressions and everything like that really work, then the sounds, like you got to balance those two things. You've got to have a nice sound, obviously, but I think the notes are much more important, and that's why you hear some songs that just jump out at you, but they don't really seem to have that crazy of a sound design aspect to them. So I think it's really important, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm the best at, writing chord progressions and melodies and stuff like that. But it's definitely something that I've put a lot of effort into and tried to focus on as I've been, traveling through my career as a music producer.
So if somebody is listening to this and they're really passionate about making music, but they don't really have any understanding about music theory, what kind of things should they be trying to learn and figure out first as a beginner?
I think it would be. That's a really hard question. I think
Mm,
you just have to learn what notes are in, what keys. So if you press a key on the keyboard, say a G, and you wanted to play a G minor scale, you should really learn all the notes that are in that scale, because any one of those notes is going to be a note that's going to work within the song if you choose that scale. And it's when you start choosing notes that are out of that scale where things get either really cool and interesting and jazzy, or just terribly, horribly wrong.
yeah.
But I think a good way to start learning about music theory, and it's kind of crude, but this is kind of what I did, is just listen to songs and then try and play them and figure out what notes those songs are using. And you'll kind of train your ear to learn what sounds right and what sounds wrong. And that's very subjective, but I think just using other people's songs as reference, and figuring out the melodies and chord progressions and stuff like that.
Nice. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk a bit about workflow. So we're going to get into the track inside in a little bit, but when it comes to workflow, do you have a set approach that you usually take when you're trying to make a new tune? Like, do you normally start with the drums, get those down first, and then just kind of jam over them to come out with some kind of hooks and melodies, or what do you do there?
Uh, I never like I. How do I say this? I think the better way to approach writing a song is not to sit down with a blank project and start writing a song. I think a better way is actually to sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write drums today. The next day, okay, I'm going to design a bass patch. The day after that, okay, I'm going to write a chord progression. And then usually what happens with me is I'll hear a song or find a sample that really inspires me, and then I just go into crazy snowball mode where I'm like, oh, I wonder what that would sound like with some drums on it, and I just drag some drums in that I made earlier, and then maybe what kind of bass sound will work on this, and I drag some basses in that I've made previously, and then things just start happening very quickly. And I think that's important to keep the momentum up of your inspiration, because once you lose that inspiration, then you're just listening to the same loop over and over, and you're not really progressing. So I would say, like, I tend to start with either the drums or an interesting sample that I've found, and then build off of that. But I think a good practice is to just have a ton of different resources at your disposal that you can quickly drag in when inspiration hits.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you want to bake the most delicious cake, then make no mistake that if you want to make it great, you should have all the ingredients on the table in
That's
front of
right.
you.
That's
Yeah,
right.
so you're just ready to do it.
Absolutely. That was a terrible analogy, but
I thought it was amazing.
I love it how you rhymed it as well.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about music, just bust out some rhymes whenever I
Freestyling,
can.
bro.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So, one thing I wanted to ask you about before we take a look at the inside of Inside is have you noticed that as you became more and more well known in the scene, did you start to get a lot more people sending you their own music, asking you for feedback?
Yes, that
Okay.
that happens to me a lot. And I try to listen to everything and reply to people, but it gets a bit overwhelming with the number of tracks I'm getting sent. But It's cool because people that are, in the same scene as me, we all kind of send our songs to each other for feedback. And, I try to give feedback, and I hopefully can get other people to give me feedback on my songs. But I think
Yeah.
it's a good thing, man. Like, when you've just worked all day on a song, all you want to do is show someone. But, it's not quite done yet, so you can't just go ahead and release it. So it's good to have like a few friends that are into producing that you can sort of bounce ideas off of every now and then, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to ask you about when it comes to that topic, the reason why I asked it is
Yep.
when people are in their first, say, like year or two, or maybe even 3 years of producing, and they send you tracks, do you notice any similarities with the kind of mistakes that people are making, or things that they, do you have any advice for them on things they should change their direction or focus on?
Absolutely. I hear the same mistakes time and time again. I think the number one mistake that really exposes you as a newbie producer is not learning how to utilize the warping algorithms of Ableton correctly. Too many times I've heard people just drag in a sample. Its default setting is beats mode, and you can
Yeah.
hear the time stretching artifacts or errors in there so clearly, but to the untrained ear, it's very hard to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Or on the flip side, people just drag in songs. They've learnt that beats mode's no good, so they just choose complex, and it sounds real muddy, and the high end is all kind of the crispiness of all the sounds have just been dulled. So I think it's really important to spend a lot of time reading about how to use the algorithms properly and experimenting with different algorithms on different sounds. Obviously beats mode works better on beats,
Right.
so long as you set up the transients right and stuff like that. So that's a big one. I constantly hear stuff in the Juno download top charts that just have time stretching artifacts all over it.
Uh,
it's
yeah, I
it's
bet.
pretty bad. The other thing is probably just bad notes. They haven't really spent enough time. We were talking about it earlier. They haven't spent enough time learning musical theory, and they're kind of just randomly plucking notes on their MIDI keyboard, and it just sounds really disjointed, and nothing seems to flow.
Yeah.
So that's probably my second criticism for newbie producers. And I'd say the third one would be not learning about the groove pool in Ableton and just writing straight beats. If you're trying to write something like funky glitch hop or glitch hop in general, or really any song, um, depending on your style, 9 times out of 10 it's going to sound better with a bit of a swung beat. Every second and fourth note is a bit late to give that groove. But too many times I hear drums that sound like a robot has made it. Don't get me wrong, sometimes you're going for a robot feel, but if you're Kraftwerk or something, but a lot of these guys that send me their songs are inspired by me, and they're trying to write funky glitch hop, and they just don't know how to use the groove pool and how to add swing to their beats. So those are probably the top three things.
Excellent. Awesome. So let's take a look inside.
All right,
And
I'll just flip over to Ableton. Cool.
so what shall we do to begin with? Shall we play a little bit of it and give people a feel for it?
Yeah, if you want to, how about I just skip to the drop? don't
Yeah.
don't bore us. Get to the chorus.
Feel inside.
yeah, you can hear the whole thing on SoundCloud. If you go to my SoundCloud, you can check it out.
Yeah.
But that's just a little taste.
So when I listen to that, I hear so much going on. I hear different textures and tones within the bass line. I hear a really overriding, great, powerful hook for the lead. And I hear all
Yep.
these little background sounds going on. So would you be able to talk a little bit about the arrangement and your thought process when it comes to creating, say, like a 4-bar loop or an 8-bar loop and just filling it out and making it sound full and finished?
My process behind that, I guess I try to just leave room for every sound to shine through, and if you kind of put sounds one after another, then you get and all the sounds are very different, then you get a very interesting, crazy kind of sounding bass line like that. Like, I'll just solo this for a second. So I'm zoomed in, and you can see all the different bass sounds separately. This is going to be interesting because you can't actually see what I'm doing. Hey, Luke.
Yeah, I love it. I'm blindfolded.
Blindfolded. So I tend to utilize like a little bit of panning. So some sounds are on the left, some sounds are on the right, some are in between, filters and whatnot. But I mean, it's hard to describe what the process is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of just trial and error, really. Does that work here? No. Does that work there? Yes. But how I come up with these sounds is all these sounds that I, have used is I'll just like hit record on a synthesizer with the beat going, and just tap away at the keyboard while I'm changing settings. And record like maybe half an hour of sounds, and then I'll go through and preview all the sounds and chop out the ones that I like and delete the ones I don't like, and then just jump right in and start arranging them. Just put this one here, how does that sound, how do I want to start it? And yeah, like that's really the most fun you can have with making glitch up music. It's really fun experimenting with the different placements of all the sounds, and you're just limitless with options. You can spend days on a 4-bar loop and have it super intricate. But I think having some sort of slight repetition in the bass line, you can see, well, you can't see, Luke, but I try to have a similar sound at the start, or try and somewhat loop it so that people on the dance floor are not completely lost. And that way it makes it a bit more catchy, I remember this, I heard this 4 bars ago, you know what I mean?
So for you, is it that in this song, is it the lead synth that you say would be that hook? Or is it the bass line that you're talking about?
Yeah, the hook is this sound here. I'd say I actually have it labeled as hook in the project, by the way, Luke.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I did consider it a hook, but it's more in the sense of like it's a melody that will kind of get stuck in your head. Because I wanted to write, my philosophy with this song was I wanted to write something that was going to be danceable and very high emotions and high energy, with a very memorable kind of melody that you just get stuck in your head, So it's kind of funny that the way I went about writing this melody is, believe it or not, listening to some Taylor Swift.
Hell yeah. My favorite artist.
And what's that song? Shake it up, when the players wanna na 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 na. It's something like that, right? And I kind of took some inspiration from that after I realized that the notes really don't sort of imply a chord progression. It's almost like you can put any chord progression under the melody that she's singing, within the realm of that same kind of key. But So that's kind of like my concept for this melody, is just to have a melody that doesn't imply a chord progression, and that way I can change the energy of the song by just changing the chord progression. So like, for example, if we listen to the first drop, right, you can hear the chord progression in the background, and then the second drop, so it's kind of like a progression of the previous chord progression, like an evolution of it, rather. It's a progression of a progression. More of an evolution.
The Ableton session.
Oh, snap.
Hey, so I wanted to ask you about that. In that second drop that you just played now, did it have the notes of the bass line? Were they changed, or were they exactly the same?
Absolutely. The notes are different. So I'm just zooming in on the piano roll here. And if you take a look, we've got A, D, E, and then F in the first drop. And then on the second drop, we've got A, C, C sharp, D, F. So it's a little bit different. It kind of goes lower, and then I wrote some chords to go underneath that. I'm not a nerdy chord guy that can name these chords, but so they're a little bit, they're definitely a little bit different. And I think, you know, the philosophy again, like having the hook that stays relatively the same while you change the chord progression underneath is really interesting. Changes the energy.
So in addition to the bass line, is there anything else contributing to the chords? Is there some pads or something that you can solo?
Yeah. So I wrote these in Massive, actually. I thought I did these in Serum, but I think I wrote this before Serum came out. So this is the build-up. So that's the first drop. And then there's an alternating kind of progression here to give it even more movement and energy changing.
Yeah.
And then the second drop would be and then that second part is the same. But another thing with the chords is they kind of revolve. Like the last chord kind of leads into the very first chord, and all the chords in between kind of tie those two chords together. And the last chord is more of a tension building chord, like that just implies like some kind of resolution. It's like something's gonna happen, suspense, and then you're back to the start again. So I tried to make my chord progression revolve in a circle.
Yeah. So it always goes back to the root chord.
Which kind of keeps it makes you want to listen on, like what's the next chord? It's that one at the start again.
Next one.
Yeah. So
and I wanted to ask you about those chords, because it sounds like there's some pitch wobble going on, like some tremolo or something. Is that happening on all of those chords or just some of them?
If I show you, well, not you, but the watchers, the viewers, you can see I do have a vibrato automation happening here on the last chord.
Now I know how Stevie Wonder felt all the time.
Exactly. But yeah, there's a vibrato on the last chord. So that last one. It's like, and then,
Right.
yeah, it's just, to give it some funk.
Excellent. Yeah, and it also builds a bit of tension, I think, leading into the
Yeah.
loop.
And it's like the classic disco sound, like the vibrato chord. So it's kind of like a little nod to disco music in general. And if anyone's wondering what this is the automation of the reverb turning on and off, which kind of gives it that breathy stop-start sound. Like you can see between this chord and this chord, there's almost a breath.
Yeah.
And then it stops because I have the automation saying that the reverb should just turn off there. So there's a little bit of automation, not too much, just the vibrato and the filter and the reverb turning on and off. I think that's about all oh no, there's some other stuff. Well, I think that all the other stuff is more for the build-ups and whatever.
So I wanted
yeah.
to ask you about, like, I understand that there's the bass line, there's the lead synth playing the hook, and then there's the chords. And of course there's drums, but is there anything else going on, like little background sounds or glitchy sounds to add to the ambiance?
I think I stole a impact sound from a random sample pack here.
Yeah.
It's just a tiny clap sound that's just like. I got some guitars down here apparently. I can't remember. I wrote this song a while ago.
Yeah.
Little twangs and. So that's hidden in the back just to like add to the rhythm, I suppose.
Yeah.
What else do we have? There's a little flute loop that I took from a sample pack. It's very subtle. More of a panpipe, actually.
Nice.
But the ambiance, as you say, kind of more comes from, turning reverb on and off and stuff like that in the bass line. Like that last sound there, especially.
Yeah.
It's got a load of reverb on it, and there's a lot of automation happening here where I'm turning the verb on and off, panning things left and right, adding stereo wideness, taking stereo wideness away, and filters. I think there's a little. Oh no, the filter's just for the. No, that filter doesn't have any automation on it. Never mind. Yeah, so just a little bit of variances in the sounds makes it interesting.
Nice. So one other thing that really struck me about the track is that the drums are so punchy and powerful, and the kick and the snare sound so well matched together, like they're from the same kit or whatever. So
Yeah.
just wanted to ask, how did you get the kick and snare to just sound so amazing?
I don't know. Let's have a listen. So those are the kicks. I forget what I've done here, actually. It's been a while. It looks like I've taken a sample from whatever pack there and then added on the snare a huge boost to the 200 hertz range.
Yeah.
And then sort of higher up on the very high end, I've given it a bit of a boost as well. And then a slight reverb, which is very quiet in the background, and then a glue compressor, which is jacked way up to increase the transient of that snap on the snare drum.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I've done there. And what am I doing with this grain delay? I forget what I'm doing there. Oh, that's for like a build up or something later on in the track. The kick, I don't have any effects on because it's a kick that I designed myself, just by layering a few other kicks and compressing and EQing things. But how did I get them to match up? Well, the thing is, the kick doesn't really have much character. It's just a kick. So unless you're writing Gabba or something. A kick is a kick, in my
Yeah.
opinion, as long as it's big and punchy. Some people like to tune their kicks to the key of their songs and stuff. But this is just a kick that I actually used for quite a number of tunes, and just by changing the snare, you change the whole feel of the two together, you know.
Right.
But this isn't really where the feel of the drums comes from. The kicks and snares are just kicks and snares. What the real action happens in the percussion section, which is all this stuff down here, in the breaks group that I've called breaks group. And these are all the little tings and tongs, and there's even a little guy in there going hoo-ha, and there's a little ting and a tong. And
Was it you?
no, it's in this sample actually. I like to take a lot of samples from just random 70s funk songs, and I look for samples, drum samples, that have something interesting about them, some character. Like it's not just some guy in a drum room drumming, right? There's like some crowd noise or just some strange sound. I actually have sampled off of YouTube before. I saw this video of this dad drumming on his little toddler's back, and the toddler starts laughing, and so he's hitting his kid on the back like lightly and the bum, and the kid is like laughing and stuff, and it's the craziest sound. So I sampled it and like layered it into my drums. I can't remember if I did it with this track. I might not have done it with this one, but it's definitely something I've done in the past.
Nice. That's cool. So just being creative and using whatever sounds are available to you.
Yeah, something that's interesting, you know, something that has character that you can sprinkle a little bit of into your drums. Obviously, if the kid was laughing and whatever over the whole track, it would be too much. But this is the drums in its entirety. And what I tend to do is come up with a loop with the percussion, and then as I design the bass and feel like the bass needs room, I'll just chop pieces out of the percussion, because the drums, the bass kind of gives a rhythmic element as well, especially in glitch hop. So if we solo the bass with that, like there's nothing here. There's actually no percussion in this section, just a snare and a hat. And then I bring the percussion back in for the end of the phrase there. So
Awesome.
So I guess, yeah, to answer your question, just the character comes from the percussion more so than the kicks and snares.
Excellent. Cool. So is there anything else about this track that you feel is worth pointing out?
I guess I'll just talk quickly about how I wrote this song, because I know you asked me how I typically write songs, but what I started with before I came up with this whole song was actually this chord progression down here. Let me just turn. That might be a bit quiet, but this is actually the loop that I started with. And that was the beginning of the song. I thought that was going to be the drop, the big drop or whatever, but that didn't end up happening. I ended up just using that as the intro. But I just expanded off of that chord progression and tried to write a different chord progression. And once I came up with that melody, then I felt really a lot of freedom with the chord progression.
Yeah.
Because I could do anything. So, the thing that carries the song along is that hook, and it doesn't matter what you do with the chords. So I think that's where I started on this track, and then just come up with the rest of it.
Well, it's an amazing track. I love it. And anyone that hasn't heard it yet, or heard the full song, or even heard the album, then definitely go and check that out. Where should they go to check out your album, Evan?
Just soundcloud.com/Slynk, SLYNK.
Yeah, make sure that you follow him there as well, because his music is amazing.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook as well. Facebook.com/Evan Slink, EvanSlynk. There'll be like links in the description or something. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be links to that stuff.
Sweet.
And are you on Twitter as well?
I am on Twitter, sort of.
Right,
You can follow
okay.
me if you want. I don't do a lot on Twitter. I'm on everything, It's part of my job.
Yeah,
to be on everything.
and definitely one thing that you guys should check out is his YouTube channel. There's a lot of great tutorials on there and fun stuff and great music. So that's another place to check him out. So one last thing I wanted to ask you about, Evan, is what's all this rumors I hear about this course that you've been making for Bass Gorilla? What's going on?
The rumors are true, Luke.
OMG.
You of all people should know this.
I've been kept in the dark.
Yeah, so yes, Luke, I've recorded a very long tutorial series. There's 20 videos. Each video goes for 20 minutes. And the tutorial series is me writing a song from start to finish. I start with a blank project with nothing, and then finish the tutorial with a full song rendered out and ready to send to labels or put on your SoundCloud or whatever. A full, I don't know how long the song is, 4 minutes or something. So,
and it's an amazing song. It is a very powerful, really glitchy, funky track. So really worth checking out.
Yeah, and all the sounds in the bass line and everything like that. I show you how to create from scratch in Serum and Massive, and then we EQ everything. We make the drums and program the chords and lay out the arrangement. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It was interesting actually starting the tutorial series because I'm sitting down saying, okay, here we are writing a whole song from start to finish, and I'm inside my head. I have no idea what I'm about to write. But it's, that's kind of where the project went and how the song turned out. So I think it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, it did. It just sounds amazing. So if you guys want to keep updated on that, then we'll put a link in the description where you can get updates and listen to the track once we're ready to go with it. It should be coming out end of this month or towards the end of this month at some point.
Late February?
Yeah, I would say late February.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Can't wait for you guys to see it.
Excellent. Well, we really hope that you enjoyed getting down with Slink today, everyone. And we hope that his advice has made you think. And don't forget to click on the hyperlink to join the early bird course, list on the course. And also make sure that you follow Slink on YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere.
That's right.
So, Evan, I just want to say thanks a lot for sharing all that great knowledge with us today.
No worries.
We're really looking forward to hearing what you come out with. Do you have any releases lined up for like soon this year, or?
I have a 5-track EP that I'm planning on releasing around the same time that we released the tutorial series at the end of February, and that's already done. I'm ready to go, and I'm also working on another kind of disco funk talkbox kind of inspired EP with Father Funk on the guitars. So I probably shouldn't talk too much about that one, but since we're still writing it, but that should be coming out whenever we finish it, basically.
Excellent. And what's the name of the EP, the 5-track EP that's coming out soon?
That would be called The Delighted People.
Awesome. So look out for that, everybody. And thanks again, Evan. It's been great speaking to you today. And thanks a lot for sharing all that great advice.
No worries. Catch you next time.
All right. Peace.
Peace.